so my director, Jane Josem, came up with this brilliant Survivor Connect initiative. And Victoria, are you able to show the slide, please? It encourages the public to write to our survivors through an online interface. And so through Facebook, they can send a message, and then it gets vetted, obviously, and then sent on to the survivor. So understandably, as the survivors were the first people to be asked to stay away, you know, a lot of them were devastated because it gave them such a motivation to come in every week, and they'd lost that contact with the school students and the general public and the fellow staff and the volunteer guides. So it's a real community. So this is, and there's a little, on the yellow post-it, there's a little handwritten note, which is wonderful. And you can also see on the Facebook post, we found some footage. The AV producer, Robbie Simons, found some footage from a Passover dinner from a few years ago, more than 10 years ago. And it was just one of the catalysts that we try to connect with, you know, what's going on at the moment. So Passover was happening, and then it was a good intro into the whole Survivor Connect project. And we also have, you know, most of the staff have a really fantastic relationship with certain survivors, so we'll call them, you know, once a week or once every fortnight. Our volunteer coordinator, Ray Silverstein, rings all of our survivors constantly to make sure that they're not feeling that they're disconnected at all. So it's a real, it is a very close community, and it's really, really important to us. And depending on the levels, as Victoria was saying, depending on the levels of ability with technology, you know, sometimes the contact will be on Zoom or FaceTime, or it will just be an old school phone call. So it's a really important part of what we do.
Fantastic, thank you, Anna. Heather, could you share what's been happening in Cape
Town? Okay, so we aren't as lucky in that we don't have a large number of survivors who are still with us. From approximately 43, 46 who originally made South Africa their home, or Cape Town their home, we probably have about 5 or 6. And they range between 80 and the eldest one is 98. And I must tell you that the 98-year-old is the one who's into Zoom and Facebook and WhatsApp chat and FaceTime chat, and the others aren't. So it is a question of us at the centre. We phone because we can't see them. We do phone on a weekly basis, and a number of us phone to make sure that they are right. Ella who's the 98-year-old, she is cricking to get as many Zoom chats as she possibly can. So now that she's got, you know, she's into a space where she feels that she's up to it, she's now said to me, please, whoever, if it's a student, if it's educators, if it's people, I'm here and ready to do it. But what we then decided and we felt was an audience that we were missing at the centre was the second and third generation survivors who essentially weren't really coming to the centre. They weren't involved. They weren't committed to the centre in any way. And so we started a short video, a video project of where we've asked second and third generation survivors to tell us about the memories of their parent or their grandparent, and to record it on Zoom or on their cell phone. We then edit it with a few pictures of who the survivor is, and we started that as a Facebook campaign, which has been unbelievably successful. I mean, first of all, it's amazing that the 2 and 3 Gs have come forward and have agreed to do this. If you look at the number of clicks and views on Facebook, has far exceeded what we expected. And now we've taken it onto YouTube. So we're trying to cover all the different bases as far as social media is concerned to try draw in different audiences according to the tastes of what their preference is. Another project that we had to start doing is we do have a lot of testimony from survivors, but it's in big chunks. And I think that when you start looking at social media or at your website, people aren't really looking to watch hours and hours of footage unless there's a particular interest or reason why they're doing it. They prefer to have something that is short, but that you're still able to keep the meat of it, and that it still gives credit to the survivor that you're actually talking about. And that's how we are trying to deal with our survivor community that we have left.
Thanks, Heather. Could Marc, did you want to elaborate on any specific projects you've been working on with survivors?
My mind's gone blank there because we were doing daily stuff. I think I tried to build on the point I was making before about connecting. Is one project which is very similar to Heather's about encouraging youngsters to be in touch with survivors. So we have a thing called Special Times, Special Stories. This is aimed at school age kids, so you're not going to go too heavy, but they're finding life a little different during lockdown, obviously. And our message is essentially, in terms of trying to find that thing that they could share with the survivor, is, without saying it like this, the essence is, you think you got it bad, they aren't living with their mum and dad. They've been through far worse in the past, and actually, much as you've got to learn from them, it'll be great for them to hear from you, to keep that communality, if that's a word, alive. So it's Special Times, Special Stories, where you get, through video or a live interaction, to hear the story of a kinder transportee or a camp survivor, whoever it might be. And then the kids get asked to produce some kind of artistic response to that, be it a poem, a letter, or whatever it might be. And that is then forwarded to the survivor. We're a bit nervous about creating literally direct contact between, I don't know, Heather, if you were doing that or not. If you are, I'd love to know how you do that and safeguard. We can't figure that bit out yet. So we're moderating that. And then there have been some lovely extensions whereby a kid who's been particularly enthusiastic in his or her response has come on the Facebook Live show and met the survivor in person and asked questions. So we're trying to join up different parts of the journey rather than do lots of sporadic one-offs. Obviously, we are doing a fair amount of one-offs to learn, because stuff where we made terrible mistakes when we were dreadful, we won't repeat. But the idea is to kind of build a little bit of cumulative communal impact and relationship build.
Thanks, Marc. And Stephen, could you talk a little bit about what's happening at USC Shoah?
I think actually the work that we've been the life we've been sharing with the Holocaust survivors in our circle has been probably one of the more enriching experiences of the last few couple of months. I think first of all we have to bear in mind that Holocaust survivors are just people. People who are, first of all, elderly and therefore more vulnerable than most to the actual crisis that we're going through at the moment. People who have memories that are traumatic. We see them as these sort of icons of, resilience and living through and surviving, but they might be themselves going through all sorts of anxiety. And in fact, some of the more robust and more individuals that I work with have found the period, particularly around Passover and Yom HaShoah, extremely difficult, not only because of the memories, but also because of the captivity, as it was described to me by one person. There's a question on the Q&A about ghettos, and one person said to me, I never felt like I was back in the ghetto at any point until just now. It's not that it's actually threatening my life, it's that I just have lost my freedom to choose where I go and when I go and who I see. Several of the Holocaust survivors in the Shoah Foundation network have passed away or been extremely sick. So how to respond to that with their families and to support their families. And I know you've had a very similar situation with the Holocaust Centre as well, Marc, that you've had a member of your volunteer team pass away. Those moments of passing and of death in the context of what we do are very serious, obviously. And on the other hand, we've had these extremely uplifting moments. So we initially said, okay, let's make a list of everybody that's in our network, divide up between the Shoah Foundation team to make sure everybody gets a call once a week, just that sort of individual self-care within our community. So everybody did that, and we all spoke to different people. And of course, on the first call, where I was making my own call to make sure someone was okay, by the end of it, I was the one getting the pep talk about keeping my chin up and keeping strong and making sure I'm resilient and keeping going. And so, in fact, it was coming really back at us in a very beautiful way. If I share my screen with you, we decided to look at this both from an internal and an external point of view. And in some respects, I'm just going to pivot as well to another question I know you've got in your mind about what do we do around Yom HaShoah and around these events. So on the self-care side, this is a picture of the calls that we're putting in each week. Kia Hayes, who I see as a participant today, runs the Dimensions in Testimony project, but this is the Dimensions in Testimony team. And what you see here is Izzy Stark, who's one of the interviewees, and this is the team that's working on the interviews. It includes donors and interviewers and technologists and so forth, and we just hang out. For about an hour or so, a couple of times a week. There's 22 people in that program that have been interviewed, and we all just hang out together, talk about what's going on with their family and so forth. And that is just internal community. We're all in this together. We're here and we're part of something that we're sharing together. And then on the external perspective, we then use the opportunity around Yom HaShoah to do some broadcasting webinar type things where, for example, in this case, those of you who know Pinchas Gutter from Cape Town and from South Africa, here he is in his apartment in Toronto, and this is his interactive testimony, and Pinchas held a webinar together to talk about how around Holocaust Memorial Day on his experiences. So it's about also giving him voice. And all the Holocaust survivors have had opportunity to participate in a variety of different online programs. I've got to give you the screen back now. There you go.
Thank you, Stephen. And I think you raised a really important point there about just communication and connectivity, right? That a lot of us are part of very local communities, for me, the university, for each of your institutions, but also a wider international community as well. We're missing conferences. I know that, there's often several very big annual Holocaust conferences. And what I really like about the kind of Holocaust conferences, opposed to many academic arenas, is they tend to bring in people from museums, from education, and from academia together. So it's really nice to see those kind of what's happening behind closed doors as such, internally, as well as the things that are being done outside. The question that you addressed there about ghettos, I think, is particularly pertinent because there's been quite a lot of crude comparisons to Anne Frank, for example, on Twitter and other social media platforms that were happening at the beginning of lockdown. But actually, what a lot of people neglected to really think about was actually this idea of feeling trapped again. It's not about young children being able to think what it was like to be Anne Frank, but rather actually survivors who have been in incredibly claustrophobic and difficult and dangerous scenarios in the past, having trauma brought back by some of these circumstances.